All right, welcome back to Empower Your Teen. I'm Emma B. Perez. I'm so excited because today we have with us Chantay Golson. She's a licensed therapist and professional counselor with a background in education and social work. She helps parents of teens lose the frustration of parenting a teenager, communicate without drama, and enjoy parenting again. Her life-changing book for teens, Your Wings Are Ready, A Miraculous Teenage Journey of Change, can be found on Amazon. Welcome, Chantay. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation. Nice to be here.
Yay. So I'm excited you're here because we're talking a lot about making the most of a gap year and all the different things that people can do. But I know that there are some parents who have some concerns for their child if they take a break in their education. And so that's a little bit of what I want to focus on with you today.
Okay.
So my first question, well, actually, before I get into my questions, I would love if you would share with us your story, just how you came to do what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, I'll try to keep it very short by simplifying my teenager, well, not my teenager, but my teenagehood and the difficulties that I found with parents or adults being candid, being able to provide guidance and specific strategies. So basically, one day I felt like I could not talk to my mother about a sexual relationship that I was having with my boyfriend. And we'll just be honest about it. And so I was conflicted because of my growing up in church and how that's against the relationship with God. Let's just say that. And so, as a teenager, being conflicted by that, I went to one of the pastors or the preachers at that particular time, and I asked how can I overcome the temptation of wanting to be intimate with my boyfriend while maintaining a faith-based relationship with God. And his particular answer to me was pray about it. So while that's very important, while that is very necessary, it was not strategic enough to help me to walk away and to understand how to apply that. You have to understand that as a teenager, the concept of what adults understand because they've had more experience and time on the earth does not translate well to a teenager. And so that was the seeding, that was the birth of Purpose Community Therapeutic Services, which is my private practice agency. I have 4 locations in the state of Georgia. But on top of that, I left with, oh, okay. Like literally, that was, oh, okay. That was my expression. So that moment, I understood that adults could not be candid or were afraid to be candid. Secondly, was not able to teach the fundamentals that are necessary for teenagers to fully understand and to interpret what is going on in their world versus what the parents or the adults are trying to teach for the preventative portion of the teenagers' lives. And so that was the seed of everything.
Wow.
Other factors, but
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable with us. I appreciate that.
Sure. Just don't show my mom.
Right? Of course, no. Mom's the word. All right, so let's talk about a gap year. So there are lots of benefits that can be had from taking a gap year, but I know a lot of parents are concerned or a little worried that maybe their teen will sort of get off track during this time. And I was wondering if you could tell us what typically leads a person to get off track during a gap year.
Well, we have to break down the person. First of all, the teenager, the taller child. Let's look at that. So from a physiological point of view, they are only maneuvering through life based on what they are being told and modeled. That's the key. That's the key element. Now, their brain doesn't fully develop until age 21. So when we talk about decisions, we're really talking about from their cap level and the ability to use decision-making skills wisely using deductive reasoning.
Okay.
So while something is scary for a parent, that same fear does not match the teenager's brain concept. Teenagers are much like children in that they want what they see. They want what they can quickly get. Okay? So when they say I want to take a gap, they're really saying, okay, I want to discover me and what the world has to offer me without having the true background of how the world can limit the ability of them finding them without true wisdom, understanding, knowledge. But all that stuff comes from the parents, the seeding. Mm-hmm. All those things come from the parents. So oftentimes the immaturity of the teenager says, I want to do this because I want to get away from school. I want to get away from my parents telling me what to do. See, these temporary things are what's on their brain that's causing them to make temporary decisions, but long-term consequences.
So they are reacting immediately to something that they see that they want to change. And all they know is, let me just get away from it. And they're not really able to think about long-term consequences.
Right, right. And plenty of people, even adults, let's just be honest, even adults try to run away or avoid from different things, not understanding that wherever they go, the problem will still exist most often because it's relevant to their perspective. Mm-hmm. It's relevant to their viewpoint. It's relevant to them finding resolution to the problem inside. Mm-hmm. When we talk about a teenager, we talk about the reaction to how they were raised in the concept of the discomfort, because teenagers go through discomfort. Why? Because they're trying to stretch themselves, which opposes their parents, right? Mindset or thought or perspective, because parents oftentimes, in my practice, I've worked with parents and children and teenagers for 20 years. In my experience, the concept is that parents either parent out of fear or parent out of guilt.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, is it fair to say that they're not parenting through a healthy, whole mindset? No. A lot of times parents are just surviving because they're stretched thin. They have to go to work. They have to pay bills. They have to come home. They have to be the homework police. They got to be the cook. They got to be the maid. They have to be all these particular things. Mm-hmm. And if they are not whole individually as a person, then how well can they give?
Right. That's true.
Yeah. So oftentimes teenagers are responding through their parents' stretched world because the parents are displacing feelings on the teenager. And we'll even start with the child who grows up to be the teenager, because you really have to put that seed in sooner than later. And parents are so surprised that what they think the teenager should do or should know based on their teaching, sometimes the timing, they waited kind of late. Does that make sense? I want to say it in a nice way. They waited too late and expect the dividends, expect their authoritativeness to succumb the teenager's mindset and what they want to do. That's why you have a lot of conflict.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, if I understood you correctly, what you're saying is that if they just have a need to get away from the parents, get away from school, it's just reactive, that coming to a gap year from that perspective could be a contributing factor to them just getting off track. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So, is there something that we can do to help that young person stay on track?
The first thing that comes to my mind, there are a lot of things we can do, but the first thing that comes to my mind is exposure.
Okay.
Okay. The more our children are exposed to things that are available in the world that's positive, the more then they will be able to develop who they are and their skills in connection with that. You know, I used to work with the Tiger Woods Foundation, and one of our particular jobs were to expose the children, give them incentives, get them to understand through documentation their incentives, their world, because they used to compete for a scholarship to spend the summer. Now, this was awesome. Spend the summer with their career driven desire. So if they wanted to be a fashion designer, we would connect them not just with any fashion designer. We're not talking about somebody at the flea market, right? We're talking about a fashion designer.
Wow.
An attorney, a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So exposure is really important to give them a new viewpoint of what's out there, because sometimes our limiting beliefs, our teenagers' limiting beliefs, the story that's in the back of their head based on what they see is limited.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing that comes to me, exposure.
I love that idea because, you know, I already talk with families about giving them a chance to try things out and understand the reality of different occupations. But you've really tied this into, you know, what they're seeing too, right? Not just what they're experiencing, but what they're observing, because
Right.
it's so true. Kids, even teenagers, you know, they do what they see. So not only does it give them a chance to try different things out, but it gives them a chance to be in the presence of other people and other situations, and gives them other examples of just kind of how to be in this world, right?
Right. And let me add to that. If they see more, then they can get excited about more. And then they are inspired to stay connected to that exposure. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am taking a summer and interning with a doctor, and that's becoming something that I'm so inspired and motivated by, what am I going to do logically? Think about that. I'm going to be thinking about how am I going to be that doctor? Then that's going to relate to, well, no, I can't just go out and be a nomad for a year. I got to be working on that. Does that make sense to you? So inspiration comes from, so goals comes from inspiration and motivation comes from exposure, i.e. modeling.
I love that. I love, because it really brings it back to internal motivation as opposed to external motivation, right? This is the exposure, the modeling is what can help them start to form their own internal motivation.
Right. Because it's not going to be just what the parents want. I can tell you what I wanted mine to be.
Right.
But is she that specifically? No. So, you know, but because if we go there, well, why isn't mine a doctor as well? Right? She's seen all the study and the prep, everything I did all the years. She's seen all of that. But we must understand that our teenagers are their own people. But the more we expose them to positive things, the more they can outweigh indecisiveness. And see, and this is why I'm excited to serve as teenagers and parents, because I was that girl who wanted advice, who wanted some realness, who didn't want to be afraid to go and speak to her mom, right? And it wasn't that I was in an abusive relationship. Let's knock that out the park. That's not irrelevant. But it goes to show that it's important that you have an open communication relationship with your teenager. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is begin to plant those seeds when they're younger, be consistent, be open, have an open door policy, and be real, be transparent. And that's how my coaching program came about. The transparency, the parental transparency program. I teach parents how to communicate effectively with their children to reduce or minimize the drama. So, because if you minimize that, guess what? You can get to the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
See, those are barriers. And that's why we keep the anger up, the disconnect up, all those things, because we can't communicate. And that's what I'm passionate about.
Wow. So how do we as parents, it might be scary what our kids tell us.
Mm-hmm,
So how
sure.
do we handle that in the moment?
Well, I would say in the moment, have a couple of techniques readily available inside of your brain. Take an emotional time out, meaning don't get up and walk away, but lean back, sit and think in your mind good thoughts. Bring yourself to a place, do some deep breathing, do brain dumping, take a sticky note and oh my God, what is, whoa, and then get back to it, because the fact of the matter is, if you don't address your team's situations and problems, number one, you're not going to build a rapport with them. So you can't be upset that now they're 18, 19, 20, and you hadn't heard from them in 2 years. You can't be upset because you didn't build, right? You didn't build. And the second thought is, that is how you get closer together. Your teenagers, they tell me all the time that, well, let me just say this. Your teenagers do not expect you to be the best advice giver in the whole wide world. Mm-mm.
Oh, good.
They don't expect. All they expect from you is to listen. That's it. That's it. They know you don't know everything, but they know that you can listen. They know that you can not interrupt them. They know you cannot judge them and criticize them, because that's what makes them comfortable to come to mom, to come to dad and say, well, at least they'll be open to listening. Now, I did not say you agree with everything. I didn't say that. But you'll understand the communication, to the fact that you will say, well, sweetheart, I do understand that you want to take a weekend trip with your boyfriend and your friends. Now, sure, he may have just graduated, okay? I understand that, and I think it sounds fun, but let's talk about the barriers of the consequences. You see how these conversations come about. Mm-hmm. Develops the relationship which then gives your teenager knowledge and wisdom and the want to, I'm just going to say it basic, the want to listen.
That's gold right there. Amazing. Okay. So let's say we have a young person who, it's been decided that they are going to take a gap year. But the parent doesn't really have that level of communication with them yet. This could be a good year to develop that while they are also getting exposed to other people and experiences as well.
It's a possibility, but I think it's an even greater possibility that the dysfunction in the communication will not be closed just because the child decides to take a gap year. Because we have to define, what is a gap? Is it me going off and climbing mountains?
Right.
House and staying with my friends for a year? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Am I still in the house? Now you have the percentage to gain some communication skills there if they're in the house. If they're out of the house, how often will you speak with them? How often will they call? How often will they be open to listening when you had not had that relationship before they left? We can't expect to have what we didn't have just because they're not with us day to day.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that if a child really has some, their gap year is intentional, right? Whether they're going traveling or getting a job or staying home or whatever it is, as long as there's an intention for what they're doing and there's a plan for what they're doing, they're more likely to stay on track than get off track. Is that right?
I would agree. Simply, I'll agree. There are some other components to that, though.
Okay. What else would you say?
I would say, do they understand true planning? Do they have they eliminated the barriers to be able to do the steps, the objectives, the small itty bitty tasks that's necessary to get to where they're wanting to go? Do they have a vision further than that 1 year? Mm-hmm. All those are relevant. Just by putting on a piece of paper, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to do this. Okay, well, what are the steps, the actions? What are the time sensitivities? What are the measurable things that you are accounting yourself for? Who's keeping you accountable? Mm-hmm. If you're not wanting to listen to your parents, then who's keeping you accountable? Who's going to say, man, I don't think that's going to work right there. How about this? Who's going to do that?
Okay. So if you feel that the parent can't take the accountability role, perhaps find someone, a program or a mentor or someone that can take that role for them.
Right. If they cannot take the role at all, if they can take the role 20%, then take it, but then also get a mentor or a program. Mm-hmm. Just don't let your teenager fight in the world that's already consuming folks. There are a lot of, and I will tell you this, there are a lot of teenagers who are homeless, a lot. So what does this gap year mean, and how are the parents, number one, holding them accountable, but how are they supportive? Mm-hmm. Because I imagine that a lot of parents are not. And the parents have a goal for their teenager. As a parent, you want your teen to do far more than you had ever. Right? And so this may be a pain point for some parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, does their goal match up with yours? And
right.
Most likely it doesn't. So then what do you do?
Well, yeah. But this is what all this conversation prior to this time should have been around.
Right.
Right? How to build character, how to build, empathy, how to survive, how you know what I mean? All these particular things. And a lot of parents have difficulties teaching their children. I hear it every single day. How do I teach them this? How do I do that? So ultimately, one of the biggest pain points for parents that I help them to overcome is being vulnerable. Mm. Yeah. Because if you're not vulnerable, you're not willing to be open. You're not willing to hear. You're not willing to do different. You're not willing to move beyond your fear. So what you do is you hold on to your fear, and then you displace that fear into other emotions that cause your teenager to have conflict with you.
And that's what you show to your child as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they see it no matter how, you can be a passive parent. That's showing something. Right? Which is not a healthy style. You can be an aggressive parent. That's showing something. See, if I was to say, okay, if the man was beating up on the wife, see, everybody can understand that, right? That this is something that the teenager's seen and they can model. So I teach anger management services as well for attorneys and the courts and things of this particular sort. And it's a huge concept of many women being in relationships as a victim or as a perp as a result of what they seen as a teenager. Now, they didn't want to be that. They didn't want to be it, but it's something they seen. And it's just unfortunate. So my point is, the best way to parent is through openness, transparency, vulnerability, being a healthy person themselves, so that they can give their teenagers health as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Going around yelling, having a short fuse with your teenager, you're modeling.
And that's going to be probably particularly challenging too when a young person is transitioning into adulthood. Mm-hmm. And they're gaining more independence. Parenting becomes a whole new thing.
It does. But it's a mirror of what has been deposited. Have you noticed that teenagers stay away from the house as much as they can?
Yeah.
Why do you think that? If you had a cool house, if you had a say so, if you had balance in the house, and you had peace in the house, why wouldn't you ever want to be at home? Why wouldn't your home be the spot for everybody to come to? Mm-hmm. There's reasons for everything.
So if a young person is taking a gap year, mm-hmm. and they're using this time to really kind of define who they are as a person and gain some independence, and let's say they're coming from, a home where they don't have the best communication with their parents, and maybe they don't want to be, at home too often during this time, but the parents still want to help them stay on track during this mm-hmm. year. Do you have any do's or don'ts for the parents to kind of help their child succeed in that year in spite of their situation?
Well, I think it goes back to the accountability part that we were talking about. That is the number one concept to where a parent can help. Okay. Number one. Number two, the ability to help the teenagers identify true and measurable goals and taking steps every day. And so again, that's the accountability. Hey, son, did you fill out 2 applications today? Right? Did you finish? Do you want me to look over them for you? So number 3 is not being authoritative with everything. You have to understand that they have to be independent in some sort of ways, but this should have been groomed early on mm-hmm. to be responsible.
So accountability versus being authoritative. It's kind of a fine line, right? Mm-hmm.
I can see it from others' perspective how it is a fine line. It's easy to overstep. But if you understand that your teenager is a person, a human being, then you and not your baby, because moms have a hard time getting away from that.
They're not our babies anymore.
So no matter how old they get, yes, they will be your child. You will love them forever and ever. But at certain stages, you have to start treating them in that level of stage so they can gain the resilience to understand what that time in their life is. That's how they build. If they're 16 and you're washing their dishes every time they eat, what are you teaching them? Because when they get out to the world, who's going to wash their dishes? Who's going to be their maid if they have a girlfriend? She's going to look at them and say, wash your own dishes. So giving the child clarity and understanding in each stage to build responsibility teaches this man how to go out into the world and to fend for himself without scarcity. Mm-hmm. One thing my mother did do that I did witness is she taught my brother how to live on his own. And then those skills translated into a husband that could do these skills. Does that make sense? So, because you don't want to gain a life of burden to other people. But it started with her helping him understand about dishwashing, about washing your clothes and folding your clothes, and the timeliness of cleaning, and going out and being responsible and opening doors. All that stuff matters. It can't be a crash course. It has to be something that's taught along the journey. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is what builds your teenager's character. And this is what they have to give the world. But if they don't have these skills, the world either will dominate them, because what happens is the world doesn't match mommy's world. Right? And then you have level of insecurities, because I work with a lot of men. And they have a lot of insecurities. And what happens when they have insecurities, they don't talk about it, they hold it in, and then it turns into anger, and the list goes on and on. Yeah. So everything cycles.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is exposure and modeling are really effective and really important for young people.
Yeah.
And if you've gotten to the point where they're graduating from high school and they haven't really had the chance to really develop a transparent relationship with you yet, then helping them find exposure and modeling from, you know, other sources, professionals, mentors, counselors, things like that can be really beneficial.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Our time is running short, but before we go, I just wanted to, you brought a free gift for our audience, is that right?
Yes, I did.
Will you tell us about it?
Okay. Well, I have a gift that is easy to use. It is a workbook that you can download, and you can either print it off, or if you have a, Adobe or et cetera, you can type on it. But this particular is a time management system for parents, but you also can use it for a teenager, time management system. So it goes above and beyond just writing down your tasks. I use 5 easy strategies to help you to move from being overwhelmed and cluttered with things to do, to feeling confident and a winner in completing all of your tasks and feeling just excited about your day. So yeah, you can download that. I don't know, are you adding a link?
There's going to be a link right below this for that. Thank you so much for that. I mean, that is something that I feel, adults, there are a lot of adults that still struggle with that and are still learning how to do that. So what an amazing gift to get it for yourself, but also to share it with your child and to have that tool during this transition into adulthood so they can start incorporating it right away.
Right.
So thank you so much for that. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to being a part of the summit.
Excellent. Yes, we will have the link to your free gift. We'll have the link to your website so people can reach out to you further.
And they can reach out on all social medias at Parenting Teens Coach.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.